All right, good afternoon, folks. It's a little bit afternoon on Tuesday. I want to update you on the very latest with Hurricane Florence and show you the changes that we have seen in the overall track in the past 24 hours. Now, I'll caution you, the changes are a positive thing for Virginia, but this in no way means that this is exactly what's going to happen. It's a nice trend to see, but we shouldn't change our overall mental state in terms of expecting the worst here and then just hoping for the very best. So let me show you what is going on right now with the hurricane. It is a Category 4 hurricane, and there is the visual presentation of this through GOES 16. It's an incredible looking hurricane right now. The eye wall is becoming better defined. What happened last night is Florence went through what's called an eye wall replacement cycle. Sometimes you'll just see it referred to as an ERC. And that's what happens with intense hurricanes. The eye wall goes through this replacement cycle, and it's a weakening process for the hurricane. And it's usually just temporary, happens for about 12 hours or so. And then a lot of times after the eye wall replacement, you end up with a hurricane that's even more intense than the original one. And that is what's likely going to happen with Florence right now. And you can see the central dense overcast around the eye wall is really robust. It looks very impressive right now. Nice outflow above the hurricane. The anti-cyclone above the hurricane looks great, and the hurricane is in very warm water, so I do expect further intensification today. Now, let me show you the steering currents, because hurricanes are sort of, I've mentioned this before in other Facebook posts, they're kind of off the rails. They're not following a storm track. If you get within a storm track, that's wind shear, it's going to tear them apart. So they're not like the storm systems that we track across the central United States. They are moving according to the steering currents around them, which are typically ridges and troughs. So what's happened with Florence so far is we've had this very powerful area of high pressure, this ridge. Area of high pressure is called a ridge, and it's been sitting out across the northwest Atlantic. Again, here's the United States, northwest Atlantic, this big ridge. The flow around ridges is always in a clockwise manner. So we're seeing the flow coming in this direction. So this is the steering flow, and that has kept Florence on more of a west-northwesterly track instead of a northwesterly track that the models initially had. If you remember, you go back a week ago, it had this thing coming up and moving to the east of Bermuda. It's nowhere close to that right now, because the models weren't resolving the strength of this Atlantic high, this northwest Atlantic high. So what's going on right now is the steering flow has continued to push and actually accelerate Florence now on a west-northwesterly track. So that's what's happened so far. Now the big thing for us, the end game for the United States, is finding out what happens when it gets to land. And this is the, I guess, good part for us. Of course, it is the good part for us in Virginia. Next 2 days, there's an area of high pressure right now that's sitting over Ohio, and it's beginning to develop. Over the next 2 days, this high will move northeast and intensify. Right over New England, it's going to be a 1024 to a 1026 millibar high. That's a strong area of high pressure. So the high is going to strengthen and become anchored over the northeast in 2 days. And so the flow around that, again, in a clockwise manner, is not going to allow Florence to come too far north. So what's going to happen is Florence is going to continue to move to the west-northwest and accelerate with the original high, but then as it tries to move poleward, it's going to run into the flow from this high and slow down. As it slows down, it's going to turn more to the west. So it looks like it'll make landfall as a Category 3 hurricane. Could be a strong Category 3 hurricane. And then the track inland is more of a westerly track rather than a northwesterly track. So west-northwest. Again, all this can change, but the spaghetti plots are starting to pick up on taking it more westerly. That lessens the wind effect for Virginia. It lessens also the overall rainfall, even though I still think we'll get a lot of rainfall and a little bit of wind. So let me show you the very latest as far as Florence goes, and this is what's coming in from the National Hurricane Center. Winds are 130 miles per hour sustained, so that makes it a Category 4 hurricane. It's moving west-northwest at 16, so that's faster than it was moving yesterday. And that fast forward motion will likely continue. And that is going to do one thing that is ironclad with this hurricane. There's no doubt about it. It's not a forecast issue that we have, and that is the storm surge, which is going to impact the entire East Coast, anywhere from the Delmarva Peninsula all the way down to Georgia. They're going to see large waves, riptides. There's already a storm surge watch in effect for North Carolina and South Carolina, and a hurricane watch for those areas as well. I want to show you the spaghetti plots because the spaghetti plot is going to kind of show you what happens after this thing goes inland. So bear with me real quick. I'm going to fire this thing up. And we show this a lot of times. It's a real mess. A lot of times it doesn't give you any kind of guidance. But there's the spaghetti plot, and everything is pretty tightly packed somewhere between around Bald Head Island, North Carolina, near Wilmington, to offshore in some cases. But after that, as the hurricane interacts with the area of high pressure, you're starting to see more. Again, it's a big mess, but you're starting to see more solutions taking this back to the west more. Some of them way down to the west, even southwest. But you don't see much coming right up into Virginia. That's a very good thing. I still think we're going to get rainfall from this, and significant rainfall and flooding. But to do this kind of track and then to loop around is something that when you first see it, you just don't believe it. I mentioned the GFS looked drunk. It still does, but it's got partners now, so they all went out to the same place, I guess. But it looks like this is more of a consensus in this type of track, and that makes sense with the area of high pressure. You always look at things and wonder if they make sense or not. It does make sense now based on the strength of the steering flow with that area of high pressure coming in. All right, looking at how the models have handled this, I'm going to go over and show you the oldest data first, and then we'll move to the newest data. So this is the Euro bringing in the hurricane, and look at the new landfall. This is going to be right over, again, Wilmington, Bald Head Island area, Wrightsville Beach. And then after that, once it comes inland, it just kind of sits and spins. It's going to stall out. All models have it just about stalling out for a day or two. And then it brings very little rainfall into Virginia. We get some. We definitely do get some, but not as much rainfall as it previously looked like we'd have, or wind. All right, now let's check out the GFS. GFS has more of a shift than yesterday in terms of where it was this time yesterday. This is the new 12Z, and look how much farther south that is. This time yesterday, actually the run from last night had it way up in here, hitting Hatteras. Now it's way down in full agreement with what the Euro's doing. It does stall it out as well, so there's remarkable agreement here between the 0Z Euro and the 12Z GFS, although the GFS brings more rainfall into southern sections of Virginia. All right, the outlier right now is the latest NAM. This is the 12Z NAM, and the NAM brings this thing up and continues to do what the GFS was doing a little bit farther north. But even the NAM, it doesn't bring it into Virginia. It just kind of stalls it there, and we only go to 84 hours. It'll likely push it back down the south. So the NAM is kind of on its own at this point. It's not very good beyond 60 hours anyway, typically. So let's go now and look at our in-house model, just one more model, and this gives you a good idea. I haven't shown this yet at any point when we've been tracking this hurricane, but I want to show you this one because this is even more impressive in terms of the track of this thing. So here it comes. There's the hurricane, and look where it makes landfall, even south of Bald Head Island. In fact, it goes almost near Myrtle Beach. It goes so far south. So that's an impressive change as well. And so you look at trends, you like the trends, but again, I wouldn't change anything about how we are preparing for this hurricane right now. I'd still prepare for very heavy rainfall. By far, the thing that is definitely going to happen is we're going to see a storm surge. We're going to see a big storm surge along the Virginia Beach area into the Chesapeake Bay, and that water, once it flushes into the bay, there's no way out. So it's going to flush up into parts of the James, the York, the Rappahannock, and the Potomac. And it's going to go all the way up past Urbana, up into Tappahannock. We're going to see this York all the way up to West Point. You're going to see water levels rising. So if you have interest along there, especially when you're looking at high tide, and we're only a couple phases past new moon, so there's going to be an extra pull there. We had the spring tides that brought us the flooding the last couple of days. We're going to see really high water levels in some of those areas. I can't tell you exactly how high right now. I'll have that data for you, but just prepare for that if you've got boats docked or you have a property that's right down on the water. So that's the thing that's definitely going to happen, is the storm surge. The flooding rain will be the next most likely thing to still happen for parts of Virginia. The winds, the very, very strong, consistently strong winds, like an Isabel or an Irene, and I'm not seeing that right now. Not seeing it, and hopefully that ends up being the case. It hasn't looked like it. Somebody told me the other day they saw somewhere we're going to get 100-mile-per-hour winds in Richmond. That could not be further from the truth. Please, you hear something like that, bring it to me and let me verify it or just spell it, because you hear stuff like that and it's panicking people for the wrong reasons, or there's no reason to panic people at this point. So that's what it looks like right now. Realistic point of view, we've seen lots of things shifting south. Hopefully for Virginia, that will in fact be the case. This is still going to be a devastating hurricane no matter where it makes landfall. Even if it just comes close to land, even with the storm surge, it'll still be a devastating hurricane. Something we'll continue to track. I'm going to head outside right now, work on Storm Rider. We're going to get that thing ready to go. I'm going to be down on the Outer Banks as this thing comes on shore, but I'm going to make sure I'll be able to get back for any possible impact that we have here in Virginia as that happens over the upcoming weekend. So I appreciate you joining me early this afternoon. I'm going to do another Facebook Live a little bit later on today once the full model suite comes in, the Euro and the Canadian, and the update from the Hurricane Center at 5 o'clock as well. So stay tuned. Tune us in at 5 o'clock. I'll have the complete rundown of everything. And you can share these posts, like these posts. Always helps getting the good word out. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And stay with CBS 6, the Weather Authority.